I watched Trump's announcement on IVF today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. And just for a little background, my wife and I are currently dealing with infertility. Trump and others spoke for just under an hour. Trump alone mentioned Biden on 9 separate occasions when talking about IVF in the US in his current administration, which makes total sense. The craziest thing that was said, and this is a direct quote from Donald Trump, "I don't think any president's ever ended a war." Direct quote. So Trump says he's slashing the cost of IVF, and he says that this is a huge win for women across the country. And then he says, "I want to thank RFK Jr.'s wife for destroying the women of The View." Regarding drug prices at different points, he will say they've come down 200, 600, 400%. They've come down 500, 600, 800%. They've come down 500, 600, 700, 800%, and even more in some cases. He says in order to accomplish that, of course, that other countries are going to agree to raise their prices so that we can lower our prices. And then if they don't, we're just going to tariff them. So if other countries don't agree to arbitrarily raise the price of their drugs because Donald Trump says he wants cheaper drugs, then you're going to pay money because, again, tariffs are a tax on you. He's talking about GLP-1s, and he says that in London they cost $130 or sometimes $88, and in New York they cost $1,300. The NHS caps prescription prices at £9.90. That's it. That's the highest it can go. Trump says the cost of IVF drugs is going to go down by 73% per cycle. I would love for him to explain what per cycle means. I would also love for him to explain to me what a luteal phase is. He's trying to talk about these drugs and he's trying to pronounce their names when he was unable to pronounce acetaminophen, and he messes up on multiple occasions, and then he says, direct quote, "Why can't you give them simple names? Here's the make baby drug." God damn, he is stupid. Because we're talking about IVF, he says that there's already been $17 trillion of investment in the United States, and it's going to be $20 trillion by the end of the year. He also says that effective immediately, he's going to make it legal for companies to provide insurance for fertility drugs. I'm just going to let you know that all of the insurance programs that Congress is allowed to get into already allows for insurance coverage of IVF and other fertility treatments. Yeah, he's making it sound like this is a new thing that he's just making up, when later in the speech, other people will say that 3 out of 10 people already have fertility treatments covered by their insurance. He also says that Democrats have done nothing about this and that they're still going to try and take credit for it. But he says if he does enough of these, then maybe eventually people will recognize that it's him who's doing it. Next up is Katie Britt. You might remember her as the woman who sat in her kitchen after Joe Biden's last State of the Union address and gave that completely false story about a woman who, under Joe Biden's policy, had been sex trafficked at the age of 12, when in fact that had occurred in 2004. And she did it with a completely dead look on her face the entire time. She has some very interesting things to say. She says the greatest gift that God ever gave her was the ability to be a mom, and that she wants to give that to everyone. Now, before I say this, can I remind you that my family is dealing with infertility? She's saying that that was a gift from God to her that other women don't get. Katie Britt, go fuck yourself. She says IVF is legal in all 50 states and Democrats are just fear-mongering about this issue. Yeah, but if you need a DNR in Texas after it doesn't take, you can just go fuck yourself and die in a parking lot. Next up is Dr. Oz, who just says weird things. He says that 1 in 3 families are under-babied. Direct quote, don't know what that means. He says, yeah, there's going to be a lot of Trump babies, but there will just be a lot of babies. He's on this pro-fascist, pro-capitalist idea that if we don't keep up the birth rates, then obviously the ultra-wealthy will lose their base of workers. And so he's just pushing that same pro-capitalist, pro-fascist idea. And then he says that drugs went from $240 to $10. And he says, I don't even know if we can do the math on it. It's too high a drop to calculate without a studied approach. This is an idiot would say that. Sorry again if I'm getting a little bit heated here, but as I mentioned to you earlier, my family is currently dealing with infertility, and these people are making a mockery of the struggles that these families are going through because they have no idea what they're talking about and are spewing bullshit out of their ass constantly in order to make Trump look good. Next up was Kyle Busch's wife, you know, the NASCAR driver. Apparently they dealt with infertility, and she says that after they heard a poor couple in a fertility clinic saying that money is the only issue for them, that God was planting a seed in their heart to make a foundation. And in 13 years of that foundation being there, they've been able to help less than 10 couples bring a child into this world per year in the 13 years that they've been there. She says 108 is all they've accomplished. And if you needed any more proof that these NASCAR people are white trash, their two kids, they named them Brexton and Lennox. Next up is RFK Jr., and you know he's going to spout his fascist shit. He also says that we're below the replacement levels. The fertility is at 1.8, and it needs to be at 2.1, and it used to be at 3.6. Maybe people don't want to have kids because we fucked the country, we fucked the environment, we fucked our living situations, we fucked the cost of housing, we fucked the cost of food, we fucked the cost of insurance. All of those things might be reasons that people don't want to bring a baby into this world, but no, RFK Jr. just says that it's infertility issues that are way lower and they know the root cause. He also says that we're poisoning an entire generation of children and then says we need to give them more GLP-1s. My God. And then he says, Trump, I know you said on your plane that you're not going to get into heaven, but you're definitely going to get to heaven because you're doing God's work by having more American babies and also for settling the conflict in the Middle East. Now back to Trump, he says that Gaza is a tough neighborhood, and then he gets asked a question by a CNN correspondent, and he says, not you, you're CNN fake news. And then a separate correspondent asks him, hey, do you have a timeline since you spoke with President Putin today on when you're going to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine? And he says, direct quote, I'd say within 2 weeks or so, pretty quick. He says because he's going to have separate meetings with Zelensky and Putin, he says that they're separate but equal. Again, not knowing what that means in this country at all, in any way, shape, or form. He also says, though, that when he ends that conflict, that's going to be number 9. You know, the 9th war he solved when it's been 0 so far. After that is when he says he doesn't think any president has ever stopped a war before, but he's stopped 8 of them. He also says, in his opinion, Ukraine would have been World War III, but now it won't, but millions of people are dead. Oh, also, it never would have happened if 2020 wasn't rigged. He calls Ozempic the fat drug again and then says it's going to be under $150 very soon. And then Dr. Oz kind of weasels his way into the microphone and is like, actually, we haven't negotiated on that one at all. So again, he's just lying so bad that even his cabinet has to step in and be like, actually, I don't want to go to jail over that, so I'm going to tell you the truth about that. He says he doesn't know anything about Christians who are against IVF, and he doesn't know why they would be because this is the most pro-life stance you could possibly take. He also gets asked, do you know anything about Bolton getting indicted? And he says, no, I don't know anything about that either. He's not a Christian and his cabinet doesn't inform him of anything and he's not in charge of anything. He is literally just a puppet figurehead who is being run by Stephen Miller. He says Democrats want to spend $1.5 trillion on immigrant health care. I'm going to remind you that the operating budget of the United States government is about $5 trillion, and about $1 trillion of that goes to defense alone. So of what's remaining, he's saying more than 33% of what's remaining Democrats want to spend on immigrants' health care. The only other statistic that's been given to us from this administration is KK Caroline, who says that $9.1 billion, not $1.5 trillion, $9.1 billion is being spent on healthcare for immigrants through EMTALA, which means you can't just say, hey, you're an immigrant and you're having a heart attack, we're just going to throw you outside to die, which makes sense. You are pro-life, aren't you, MAGA? A reporter asks him, are you going to put sanctions on Russia? And he says, maybe in 2 weeks. He also says that he said this to Putin in this exact same way. Would you mind if I gave a couple thousand tomahawks to your enemy? And then he says that Putin said no. What is he talking about? And finally, he says that gas is going to be down to $2 very soon, even though the national average gas price has barely changed since he's been president at all. And here's a direct quote that he finishes this with: the price of things are down. No explanation, just things. There you go, 8 minutes. I didn't know he'd be speaking like 10 fucking days in a row, and I'm sorry that I got a little heated in here, but this is an issue that is near and dear to me and my family's heart. All of that being said, some of you didn't like that I'm plugging my Patreon, that I'm offering additional content to those who wish to support me and get additional content from me, but I am going to plug it again here. If you want to, you can go on Patreon or Substack. Patreon is cheaper because Substack won't let me go down to $3 per month, and you can get additional content from me. I'm going to be putting out 1 to 2 things a week, covering separate news, doing some behind the scene things. I think I'm going to do some cooking videos for you too, because why the hell not? It's about my life and I get to share it with you however I want. So anyways, just throwing that out there that it is an option. It's not something that I'm trying to do as a money grab, although I would love to be able to do this as a job full time. But again, offering additional content for a nominal fee, I think is something that's perfectly reasonable. And fuck these people. Fuck Katie Britt especially for her shitty fucking comments. Also, always fuck Donald Trump. He's a piece of shit. Also, if you can, really do try and make it out for No Kings. I would really appreciate it if we could get an even bigger crowd than we had last time across the country.